Hey dear, Zimzy here, and I know it's been a while since I've sat down for an on-camera video, so I just wanted to catch up with you all and talk about some exciting new fantasy releases that I've read recently. Starting off with the Silverblood Promise by James Logan, and this story centers around Lucan, who is a disgraced academy dropout, and he's estranged from his conspiracy-obsessed father. However, when his father is discovered dead with a cryptic note in his pocket, Lucan goes searching for answers and discovers a startling conspiracy that could shake the whole city. And this fantasy was so much fun. It had the snark and wit of The Lies of Lamora, and Lucan as a protagonist was really fun as well. Like, he has a big mouth and he's constantly getting himself into trouble, and he has to try to use his brains to figure a way out. I think though what I'm most curious about is the mystery behind the Faerun. So they are like this big plot going on in the background that I feel like we'll find more about later. But essentially, they are a long-lost civilization. They were very high-tech with all these fancy relics. And there's this one scene in the story I really liked in particular, where there's this Faerun relic that's kind of like evil Jenga. So it's a game of chance that Lucan is playing, and you basically like press a brick. And if the brick shines blue, you will experience this terrible nightmarish illusion, like bugs might crawl out of your body, or you might find yourself on fire. It's all an illusion, but it feels real, and the last contestant standing, or who doesn't pass out, or who doesn't like just tap out, say, I'm done, I don't want to do this anymore, wins. And that was such a cool, like, psychological horror scene, and we're getting hints of tentacles, and I am obsessed with cosmic horror, so I'm so excited to find out more about the Faerun. I feel like we're set up to find out more about them as the series goes on, but I'm invested. Yeah, this one was a romp, and I really recommend it if you're looking for a fantasy that has mystery and adventure and feels something like Indiana Jones. Okay, next we have a Slavic fantasy that I was so excited for, and that is When Among Crows by Veronica Roth. So this one is an urban fantasy set in modern-day Chicago, and it centers around a mysterious man named Demeter, and he teams up with a Zamora. He promises her that he'll break her family curse if she helps him track down the legendary witch Baba Yaga. And you might be asking, what on earth is Baba Yaga doing in Chicago? Which is a good question, and it turns out there's a good answer to that. So apparently, in this world, a lot of the Eastern European monsters and creatures have fled Eastern Europe because there's an order of knights who are hunting them down, and these knights are super deadly. Like, they can pull out their own spines and turn it into a sword, which is badass, and I love that concept so much. But essentially this kind of mirrors the immigrant experience, and Veronica Roth pulled from her own family heritage and experience there, and I can somewhat relate, not with the being chased by knights or being a mythological creature, but my own family came from Slovakia and fled during World War II because things were getting scary, so that's like a cool little allegory there. Yeah, I was so excited for the sheer amount and variety of different Slavic mythological creatures in here. Like, there's Noon Wraiths, which if you've played The Witcher, you'll recognize them. And funnily enough, I was checking out an interview from Roth, and apparently she was inspired partly by The Witcher, because that's from a Polish fantasy author. So it's cool to just see some Slavic heritage in there. One part that really confused me though is that the blurb on the back, the plot summary, spoils a huge secret that's revealed at the climax of the novella, and I'm not sure if this was the marketing team's fault, but either I would have taken that bit of info away or I would have just included it in the story earlier on and just let that be dramatic irony to amp up the tension. Overall, though, this was a really interesting world that gave me American God vibes, so I'd really like to see it explored more. Okay, we have another Slavic-inspired fantasy, but this one is high fantasy, and it is dark, and it is Sins of Their Bones by Laura Samotin, or Samotin. I was getting different pronunciations from Google Translate, so forgive me if I butchered that one. So this story takes place in the aftermath of a civil war, and it centers around two estranged husbands. So you have the original rightful ruler, Alexei, and then you have his usurper, power-hungry, immortal husband who overthrew him, and Alexei is now in hiding. He's in exile, and he's trying to figure out a way to kill his immortal husband in order to save the world. And the dynamics between the husbands was absolutely incredible. It's like this tragic, messy, doomed lovers. It kind of reminded me of like Ghetto and Gojo, or possessive Griffith over Guts. And I'm like, yes, thank you for this food. Thank you for these tropes and these dynamics. Concept-wise, I loved this story so much. It had so much angst, and I ate that up. But what threw me off was the structure. So this story felt like I was reading a sequel while missing out on the first story. So we get like little hints, little snippets of passages of the build up to the Civil War, and those are so juicy and wonderful, and I was living for it, but I almost wish that we could have gone dual timelines with more of the lead up events so I could understand the story better. Or I wish that this had been a trilogy, because yes, there's going to be a second book, so the aftermath, and really I feel like either it should have been a duology with more integration of the timelines, or just a whole trilogy. Okay, last but not least, we have a genre-bending post-apocalyptic fantasy called Road to Ruin by Hana Lee. The story centers around Jin, who is a mage courier whose job is to deliver letters across the dangerous wasteland, and she's exchanging letters between a prince and a princess who she both has a crush on. Essentially, she's a messy disaster bisexual, and I absolutely adore her. And then one day, the princess reveals that she's betrothed to this terrible fiancé, and she wants help escaping, and of course, Jin agrees. So this book is an arcane punk, meaning that it's kind of like Jack and Daxter, where it blends science and magic fuels the machinery and technology of the world. Like, Jin uses magic to fuel her little motorcycle that she rides around, which is really cool. And also, magic is treated as a finite resource. It's not this like infinite well that characters can just tap into, so it causes like a lot of conflict and dilemma, and like if you're stuck in the waste without magic, you're screwed, and you'll probably like die from all the monsters that live there. And if you're like a nomad raider who lives in the waste, you either have to find like a little mana spring to tap into, or you have to chase down these deadly mana storms which can electrocute you, which is, you know, fun times. But it was a really cool world. And based off of Goodreads, this is the first in this series, so I'm really excited to revisit the characters and this world again. And basically, if you love the chaotic, gay energy of the Locked Tomb series, I think you'll have a fun time with this one as well. Alright, that is a wrap for the fantasy books that I've read recently, and to kind of fill you in on some stuff that's been going on in the background, I've been focusing on writing, and I've also been having a lot of health issues. I've finally gone to a specialist, and I will be having a minor surgery mid-June, and I will be on bed rest for about 2 weeks after that, so I could use a lot of reading material. So if you have any recommendations for like manga or horror or sci-fi or fantasy, let me know down below in the comments, and hopefully I'll have a lot of extra time to catch up on my TBR. As always, thank you guys for sticking around, and I'll talk to you later. See ya!